about how to get off of the floor. This is a topic that comes up all the time in our treatment sessions, either because people want to get onto the floor or because they've had a fall and have had to figure out how to get back up and want to know, all right, how can we make this go better next time? Hopefully we can nip that in the bud or head it off at the pass and work on the skills that you need before the need arises, but many times this is an after the fact sort of thing. So today we're going to get ahead of the curve, and boy, I've used a lot of cliches in the last 30 seconds, but today we're going to try to talk about some things that you can consider and can work on at home to help improve your skills with getting up off the floor. So why is this even important? Well, the obvious is that if you fall down, it's helpful to know how to get back up safely. A lot of times, if someone does fall, in the rush or the effort or the excitement of getting back up, many times another fall happens or someone gets injured in the effort of trying to get back up. And so from a safety standpoint, this is an important skill to have, and it's important to understand how to do this safely, especially in individuals who are recovering from stroke who may have weakness in their arm or their shoulder. You know, under the armpits is a place where people will often grab to try to lift or pulling on arms to try to help someone up. And so in the effort of trying to be helpful, many times caregivers with very good intentions actually cause additional injury pulling on someone's affected arm. So today we want to talk about some strategies to make sure that in the event of a fall, we are preventing further injury. In addition to that, this is an important skill just from an empowerment standpoint. You know, we tell people that if you're afraid of falling or you think you're going to fall, you probably are. And so if you take the converse of that notion and say, you know, I'm really confident in how to get up off the floor, it may take away some of that fear of falling, because a lot of the fear in falling is worrying about how you're going to get back up. So if you know how to do it, you have the skill and you have the ability and you're comfortable getting down and getting back up, that takes away some of the fear of actually falling. So you can sort of extrapolate on this to say if you're not as afraid of falling, you may then also be less likely to fall. So from a safety standpoint, from an empowerment standpoint, this skill is important, but also from a functional standpoint. You know, we've talked a lot so far about getting up from a fall, but there's a lot of functional reasons to get down on the floor. Maybe you want to play with your grandkids. Maybe you need to scrub the floor or clean the toilet. Maybe you dropped a $20 bill and you want to pick it back up. Maybe you want to get in the bathtub and take a bath. I mean, these are all reasons why you may get down on the floor, and because that's where you want to be, and then you need to know how to get back up. Julia is now distracting me because she's making funny faces behind her mask, behind the camera. Apparently this version of a mask is not going to work for us.
That lasted 5 minutes.
For when we reopen, and this one is off the table. She didn't last 5 minutes. Okay, so we've talked about in case of a fall, we've talked about feeling empowered when you know how to get back up. We've talked about getting down on the floor for a functional purpose. It's also a really good exercise. You'll see as we go through this that there's a lot of range of motion that is required to get down onto the floor and back up, a lot of strength, a lot of coordination, a lot of balance, and so just thinking of this as an exercise, there's a lot of value to this skill. All right, so let's talk about where you might get down on the floor. Obviously, there are a lot of options for ways to do this. You know, you may use furniture and get down on your knees and then transition to the floor. Some people may not go from a standing position. They may sit on the edge of the furniture and kind of slide down onto the floor. That's an option. If you have a lot of flexibility and balance, maybe you don't need furniture and you're just reaching down to the floor and coming down and spinning around and getting back up. You know, if you're my 3 and 5-year-olds, you just sit down and you get back up, and it's whatever. So there are many, many, many different ways of getting to the floor and back up. Obviously, the more support you have, the more structure you have, the easier this is to do. Also, if you're breaking up the trip into smaller increments, it becomes easier to do. So if you're just starting to foray into floor transfers, or you have had a stroke or some other brain injury, spinal cord injury, you've had a recent fall, you're unsure of your balance, any of those would be reasons why you would want to set up an environment with more structure. So we will start this process by using very firm, stable, still furniture. And then I'll show you some other ways to progress this activity. But in terms of breaking up the trip down to the floor, you know, we don't have to go from standing or sitting on the couch all the way down. You know, maybe we say, okay, well, I'm going to be on the couch and I'm just going to come down a little bit. And then I can go from this surface down, either, you know, down to the floor, or turning and using this to help me finish that trip. So when you think about embarking on this for the first time, you want to have stable furniture, and you want to have some tools or equipment available to help you break up the trip. So stack of books, a footstool or an ottoman, a prayer bench, a trunk that you might put your blankets in, coffee table. Any of these things can offer support and help you break it up a little bit. Okay, you also have the option to have a caregiver help you. And if you have difficulty moving parts of your body, you may not need that caregiver necessarily to provide lifting assistance, but if you're in this position and you're trying to move this foot back, or you're in this position and you're trying to move this leg forward and that's difficult for you to do, the caregiver could assist with just transitioning this limb for you. But this brings up another point, which is that when you are getting up from the floor, it is most important that the individual getting up knows the process for getting up. So that if you do need help, it's your responsibility as the person doing the activity to tell someone else, this is what I need from you. And that ensures that you get the help that you need, but it also ensures that people don't just jump in and do more than you need, which may lead to an accident, to a loss of balance. Somebody getting in and trying to lift you up when you can do it yourself could cause you to fall over. So in terms of advocating for yourself, being able to talk someone else through the process and tell them what you need, that's very important with this transition. And so we'll talk about how that might look when we actually start working on the floor transfer. Okay, and Sam is my trusty assistant back here. If you think of something as we're going along and I leave it out, then by all means, hop in. Okay, so typically when we are starting this process here in the clinic, we will start from a standing position, and here I'll put it over here. Yeah, so we'll start from a standing position, and we'll use the mat table for support. Now, if we're talking about an individual who has had a stroke, I will usually have them keep their more affected leg forward, and their less affected leg is going to be the one that takes that big step backward. You can either face the mat, or you can turn so that your less affected side is toward the mat. So this is the arm that can work. Here, I'll put this one in the pocket so we can remember that this arm is not working very well right now. So this is the arm that I'm going to use. The other reason for having the less affected leg forward, the more affected leg, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The more affected leg forward, the less affected leg back, and the less affected arm on the table is that now I have a nice tripod between my hand, this foot, and this foot, which makes me very stable. I can keep my weight right in the middle of this triangle, and I'm very stable going down and coming back up again. If I have my, just to make this easier, if I have my good leg forward and my bad leg back, now all my weight's going to be over here. I'm going to be a little bit more off balance because I don't have that nice tripod to stay in the middle of. So we're gonna have and I hate using the word good and bad, but it's gonna get really wordy if I keep going with less affected and more affected, so bear with me on this one. When you go to get down on the floor, you'll stoop and put your good hand on the surface. And then you can adjust that bad leg a little bit forward, and then the good leg is gonna take a big step backward. Now that big step is really important, because the next thing that's gonna happen is you're gonna start bending both legs, and you're gonna lower yourself to the floor. So you'll notice, because I took that really big step back, there is space now between my foot and my knee. And that makes me feel more comfortable, more balanced, because I have room to move. If I take just a very small step and I try to go down, now I'm real crunched. I don't feel very stable because everything is crunched up together. And so this process can be a little bit more hairy. So the further apart you can spread your feet, the more stable you're gonna feel as you make the transition. Okay, so I started from a standing position, and it's fine if you wanna adjust your feet a little bit first. Moving the bad leg a little bit forward and the good leg a little bit back. You can start to stoop, put your hand on the surface, and then take an even bigger step back and come down onto your knee. And then from here, the next step for most people is that this leg that's in front is going to transition to being on the floor. Now, if you have the ability and the control to move it back, great. But you can also adjust your body around this leg. So for example, if it's hard, if you don't have the hamstrings to pull your leg back, you can start using your other leg in your hand to start turning your body until you can get that knee to the floor. And so that is an option for kind of moving around your more affected leg. And then from here we reach to the floor and come down on your side, and now I'm on my less affected side, so I can move here. And then from here you have the option to transition to whatever posture you want to go into. If you're going to be working here on the floor, maybe you want to sit, or sit with your legs out. If maybe you are coming down to do some exercises and you need to lay down. All that's fine. And then when you get back up, we're going to just do the reverse. I usually tell people to come onto your less affected side, push up so that you're sitting on your hip, and then here goes what is generally the hardest part for most people, which is moving from sitting on your side to pushing your hips up in the air to get to your knees. And then we come back up, and now I'm on 2 knees, but I need to get to 1 knee. And again, this is that place where this is a difficult transition because you're taking your more affected leg and you're trying to move it forward. But remember, if you can't get it all the way, you can still pivot on your less affected side until you can get into this half kneeling position. Then I'm going to tuck the toes of my back foot under so that I can push through both legs. I'm going to lean forward. I'm going to push down into the mat, push down into both legs, and I'm going to straighten my knees to come up. I'm going to take a step forward, and I'm going to stand up. You always have the option to, as you're making that transition, to bail out and go onto the couch or the mat or the bed or wherever you are. But I recommend to people that you plan to stand all the way up, because you're more likely then to have your balance and to get all the way up safely than if you plan to kind of bail out and dive. All right, so that's the overview of what we're going to do. We talked about some tools that you might want to use to help break this up. So I have a gait belt here. A lot of people have these at home. We don't use them a lot in the clinic, but a lot of times families will find them helpful at home as an extra something to grab onto, especially if you're grabbing onto this instead of the affected arm. I'm always in favor of that. So if you have a gait belt or even just a regular belt on your clothing that a person can grab onto, those are possible tools that you can use to assist yourself up in the event of a fall. The other thing that we recommend a lot is our knee pads. These came from our local home improvement store, Lowe's, Home Depot. They're just foam knee pads. You can find them in the section where the tools are, like the hammers and screwdrivers, and they have knee pads that are a lot more high-tech and more expensive. These are like $2 because they're just made out of foam. But they do the job quite nicely of padding your knees during this transition. One of the things that can happen if you're getting up from a fall and you've had a stroke, one of the uncomfortable parts is when you have both knees on the floor. Well, if you are in a position where you are uncomfortable, that can start to increase your tone, which can then make this process even more difficult because your body is fighting against you and moving in one way when you're trying to move in a different way. So the knee pads can help make this process more comfortable, which can then help to minimize your abnormal tone responses. If you have arthritis in your knees, knee pads are definitely going to help. If you're on a hardwood floor, it's going to make it a lot more comfortable. And they're cheap. So when you go to the store, if you buy some of these, buy like 3 pair and keep one at your house, one in your car, and if you have a go bag, like if you go to appointments and you have a bag of supplies that you take with you, put a pair of knee pads in the bag, and then that way you always have them in case you need them. Certainly if you're going to get down on your knees and scrub the floor, knee pads are a really nice thing to have while you're down there. So I'll take these off just so you can see me a little bit easier, but these are a really nice option. The other thing you can do with these foam knee pads is if you have a yoga block handy is you can do what we did, which is to tape the knee pad to the yoga block. And what this is going to do when I put it on my leg here, this is going to be the knee that I end up kneeling on, and then instead of going all the way to the floor, I'm stopping 3 inches higher than that on this yoga block. So it's a way to grade this process so that you're not going all the way down. Yoga blocks are nice and light, so I can walk around with this and it's like I'm not wearing anything. So this could come in handy if you're actually doing an exercise. All right, let's see, where are we now?
Yeah, one more thing here, I'll pop it in here too. Another great tool that's a very good thing for empowering you as well if you're going to be home alone and you have a chance that you might fall, are any of the systems that help alert people to the fact that you did fall. Either the life alert that you wear a button, or it's pretty cool on the new Apple Watches, the Series 4 and above, they have fall detection. So you turn it on and the watch itself is able to tell when you've had a fall. It can be programmed to either immediately call emergency services to help you get up, or it can be programmed to call a family member. So it's those are all good tools to be able to have in case you're going to be left alone and falling is a worry. We also like to suggest that if you don't have either of these, to always have your cell phone near you in case you do have a fall, so that you can call someone if you need help or if something happens that you're hurt. So just a couple more tools.
Yeah. Okay. So how are we going to work on this? First of all, if you're going to embark on this process of getting up and down from the floor and you haven't done it in a long time, this is probably not something that you want to try by yourself the very first time. If you've had a stroke and half of your body doesn't move like it did before, or you've had a spinal cord injury and part of your body doesn't move like it did before, this is probably not an activity that is necessarily safe for everyone to do by themselves from the beginning. So even though we're going to show you some strategies, show you some exercises that you can work on, please know that we are offering advice, but that advice is not going to be the right thing for every person. And this is something that we work on in therapy, where a therapist is available to assist and to make sure that you are safe and to help wherever you need it. So this may not be an activity that is right for everyone. But for some people, you will be able to engage in these exercises and in these drills and activities and work toward developing this skill. And also, kind of following up on that, is once you master this, you do have to practice it. You do have to keep doing it. The phenomenon of use it or lose it definitely holds true with floor transfers. You can learn to do it and sort of meet your goal in therapy of being able to safely get up and down, but then if you don't do it for a month and you suddenly try, you may realize that, oh, I've lost some of the strength or flexibility or balance that I needed to be able to do this successfully. So I always recommend to people, once we figure out how to do this and we master it and a person can demonstrate this skill safely, I say you need to incorporate this into your weekly routine. You know, preferably you're getting up and down from the floor every day, but certainly 3 or 4 days a week, you should make a point to get down and get back up. And that way you retain the skill that you need, the strength, the range of motion, the coordination. You also remember the steps, and the more you do it, the better you are at it. Okay, so here we go. Sam, why don't you be my model, and I'll let you move and I'll talk. Okay, so we talked about that we want to go down through this half kneeling position. Now for some people, and half kneeling means that when you go down on your knee, one knee is back and the other knee is forward. The alternative to that would be bilateral kneeling, which is where you go down on both knees. Either way is an option, but let's talk about this half kneeling transition. So go ahead and stand up. And I'm going to kind of throw in some exercises you can do as we are practicing. So if just to practice this transition of going from standing down to half kneel, maybe we first need to practice the transition of standing and moving to a staggered stance position. So you could start at a counter or a higher piece of furniture, and you can either face it if you can use both arms for help, or you can have your good arm or good side there next to the counter. And then all you're going to do is have your more affected foot a little bit forward, and you're going to take a step back with your less affected foot, and then just do a little like curtsy or a lunge. Bend your knees. Just lower yourself down a little bit, straighten your knees and come up, and then step forward. And then the next time, maybe you take a little bit bigger step backward, and you bend a little bit lower, and then you come up. And so now we are practicing the skill and the confidence and the transition that we need to start moving from that standing position down to a kneeling position. Now, when you're ready to really lower yourself down, it's not necessary to go all the way down. So following, just go ahead and stand in the same position you were in. Okay, so we could take a little stool or a surface and put it under Sam's knee, and now when she goes down, she has something to contact. And now she can go from that position back up. And so now she's doing like a little staggered stance squat here, or lunge, where she's coming down onto that knee and coming back up. And then we can make this surface even lower. So we'll take this out and put this one in. And now she's got to go down even lower. Getting it so that it goes right under the knee is important. And so now she's following that process of getting all the way down. If the counter, as the person starts going down lower, if the counter is too high, because now the thing that you're reaching and supporting on is way above you, as you go lower, you may decide that you feel more comfortable using a lower surface for support. So same idea, more affected foot forward, less affected leg backward. Now you have a lower surface, so your balance points are a little closer together. So these are some drills that you can work on for practicing that transition between standing and half kneeling on the floor. Okay, so now we have developed that confidence to get all the way down onto the floor. If you'll come here and go ahead and go through your half kneel, so your right foot forward, left one back. Now lower yourself down onto that left knee, and again, this is where these knee pads come in handy. And so now, if I am Sam's caregiver and I'm going to come in and assist her to move this leg into a bilateral kneeling, so getting the knee on the floor, Sam is going to need to lean on the surface over here to get her weight off of this foot. And then the best place for me to grab is down here at the ankle, and I'm going to pull her heel toward her bottom to bend her knee, and then we can gently lower her knee to the floor. If the individual is wearing a brace on their ankle that limits motion at the ankle, you may want to consider taking that brace off to make these transitional movements. For some people, the brace offers protection that will prevent the ankle from twisting. For other folks, they say, you know, I can't move with this thing on, it feels too restrictive, and so you may have more success taking it off. So that's how you would go from a half kneeling down to bilateral kneeling. Now the reverse is going to be true when we need to get out of this position. So I'm going to remind my loved one here, or you can remind me of what you need. But we need to shift the weight onto the less affected side toward the surface, so that again you can come here under the ankle and bring this knee forward to put the foot flat on the floor. All right? But it's very important that the weight be off this side and onto the surface. If she's got weight on it, it's going to be really hard to move it. All right, so let's bring this guy back again. Good. And now from here, you have a few options. You can move away from the surface. So again, as your caregiver, I could help with moving this leg out, and then you move in. And now you can put your hand down on the floor. And so as the helper, I can just be here to make sure you don't face plant. And from here, I want you to sit down on this side. And so we moved away from the surface so that she would have a little bit more room to come down onto her side, because we want her on her less affected side so that she has an arm to support her and she has the ability to move in this posture a little bit if she wants to. Now from here, it's up to you. So if you were going to lay down and do some exercises, maybe we have our pillow handy. And you can come on down onto your side. You could roll onto your bag. You can scoot in this posture. All of these are options. But the other reason that I got the pillow out is to remind you that if you do fall, there's no hurry to get back up. Again, one of the biggest mistakes people make is they rush into this process of getting up. Your adrenaline's pumping, your heart is pounding, something unexpected has just happened to you. Take some time and relax. Just breathe. Grab a pillow. Take a nap. It's fine. Unless you're in the middle of the street or your house is burning down, there's no reason to rush this process. So take the time to calm down. Survey yourself from head to toe. Make sure that nothing is injured. And formulate a plan. Okay, here I am. This is what I have to work with. How am I going to get up? Oh, hey, husband of mine, can you run and get my knee pads so that this process is a little bit more comfortable as we're doing it, because I'm here on the bathroom floor. Then you and your caregiver can talk about how might you, Lorraine, how might you get back up? Sorry, somebody came to the door. You can formulate your plan. If you are injured, or if you just feel like it's not going to be safe, you can always call 911. That is why that service exists, to help you in the event of an emergency. So if something happens and you need help, don't be afraid to call 911. Apparently nobody is aware that we're actually live on the internet right now.
I said quiet on the set.
So a lot of activity going on all of a sudden. But, okay, so don't be afraid to call 911. But now we've rested and we've formulated our plan. And so what we need to do is get Sam in a position where she can move. And so in order to do that, she can either come up to a sitting posture if she has the abdominal strength to get up that way, or what may work better is to have her roll onto her less affected side and push up onto her elbow. And again, I can help this process if she needs it. But this brings us to our next exercise. So if you can roll around here, it'll be a little bit easier to see. And you could do this on your bed. So if you were laying on your less affected side on your bed and you're like, wonder if there's any exercises I could do to help this floor transfer become any easier. Well, here's a great one. So she's laying on her less affected side. You can have your knees bent so you're nice and comfortable. And now Sam's going to practice pushing up onto her elbow. Now, your arm is stuck underneath you right now, so this is not a good position to be. So what I would recommend is bring this arm out either at a 90-degree angle or a little less. And you're going to come forward and up on a diagonal onto that elbow. And now you can go back down. And you can come forward and up on a diagonal. And she's working all of these abs and shoulder muscles to bring herself up. And so then from here, this is a workout, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I would say something that I've noticed with if you do have some tone in one side of your body, it can be easy to want to leave this side of your body behind, which will make this whole endeavor a lot more difficult. So making sure to bring your affected shoulder forward while you try to do it.
Yep, and you don't want to tear something or injure your shoulder because your arm fell behind your back. So, you know, your arm could be across your stomach, it could be laying here in front of you. Just make sure that you're not laying in a position where your wrist is flexed. So your hand could be laying in front of you. You just don't want your arm falling behind. We want to protect those joints. Now from the elbow position, you again have a couple of options. You could press into that hand and work on coming up onto your hand, and that's a good tricep exercise. We're all sore from working out this week, so Sam's really feeling that. And so now when she's up on her hand, go ahead and stay up. You may want to adjust this hand back a little bit. And here goes the hardest part, which I mentioned before, which is making that transition from being on your side to being on your knees. And so from here, again, on your bed is a fine place to do this. You want to bring your knees up a little bit so that as you come up, roll toward me and come up onto your knees, lifting that hip up and coming back down and coming up. Now, sometimes people can't get up to this position the first time on their own. So if a caregiver is helping, then as part of the exercise, maybe we have a stack of pillows or a step or something so that you just go part way down and then come back up and part way down and come back up. And you can make this transition, you know, these surfaces lower and lower so that you're going a little bit more and coming back up, a little bit more and coming back up until you can go all the way down and then come all the way back up. So this is another activity that you can do to build strength and build skill. Again, if you don't have a lot of use in your more affected arm, it may not really have a job right now, and that's okay. As you gain more, we can teach you in therapy how to incorporate your affected arm more. So the big thing in this transition now is we just want to protect it. We don't want to damage any structures. We don't want to tear anything. All right. So now, both in our exercise and in our transition here, we've made our way back to hand and knees. And so now we have to get over to our surface. Now, sometimes people will be able to move in this tripod position. It may be easier. Go ahead and go back into your side sitting position. If you have to scoot, this position may actually be the easier position to scoot into to get close to your surface. If you scoot all the way back to the table, you may be able to put your hand up on the surface, which can allow your arm to give you that extra boost to get up into kneeling. And that may work for you. If you, put your hand there, if you are going to use the hand on the floor option, a good place for the caregiver to be is with their hand in front of your more affected shoulder. And this hand can either just be balancing myself, or I can reach around and assist Sam. Come from back here, Julia. So I'm using my front hand to protect her shoulder, and I'm using my back hand to come around to her waist. And this is if you had that gait belt or a belt on your clothes, you may use that to grab onto to assist her to come up onto her knees. But this hand in the front here is keeping her from face planting. So if this arm gave out or she got off balance, I'm here to make sure she doesn't go face first. Once you're in this position, adjust this knee toward the surface a little bit, and you're going to feel a lot more comfortable with your knees separated. Okay? So now we're going to bring this arm up to this table. There we go. And now we need to move into that half kneel position. And so Sam's going to shift her weight toward the table, and I'm going to come under here and bring her knee and her foot forward. And now she's going to tuck these toes underneath, and she's going to push herself straight up and step forward. And then she can either stand all the way up, or she could turn and sit in a very nice, controlled manner. Some other options could be if you were on the floor and you had the strength to do so, you could, again, use these surfaces and go backwards. So, you know, you could, this works really well if you have the ability to use both arms, where you can use your arms to boost up. So for someone who has a spinal cord injury, this may be a good option if you have some upper body strength. And then you just, again, boost up to the next surface. So it's a way of breaking up that transition and using surfaces to help you make smaller transitions. You can, you know, like we demonstrated in the beginning, kind of slide on and off your surfaces, and so again, you want that more affected leg forward, and you can slide down onto your knee, and then just turning a little bit. You don't have to stand all the way up from here. You could just boost your cheek up onto the mat. So that's another way of getting up. There really are as many ways as your imagination can produce, but hopefully these strategies will at least give you some ideas, some insights, some exercises that you might work on to start to develop the skills that you need in order to do this. What we will do when we post this video onto our Steps Live page on our website is we'll actually put some of these exercises in written form so that you can reference it, and we'll have a written document of sort of your getting on and off the floor exercises that you can work on at home. And we're working on just some tip sheets to have as well. So make sure that next week you check out our website, stepsforrecovery.com, under the Our Programs or Our Services tab. The very bottom one is Steps Live, and if you click on that link, you'll see all of the Steps Live that we have produced so far, and you can link right to watch the Facebook video, and then also if any resources were offered during the presentation, then they'll be there as well. So same goes for this one. We'll have it up next week, along with resources to help you along your journey if this is an activity that you choose to participate in. But again, I can't reiterate enough, this is not an activity that is for everyone to start with on their own the very first time. We would certainly love if everyone developed this skill and developed this function, but for some people you're going to need to work with your therapist first, and so that's why we're here. But this is a resource for you going forward.